Since you're here, I'll assume that you have an interest in meditation. Either that or you're crazy. Maybe both. And since you have an interest in meditation, I'm assuming that you have some idea about it, that it is of value or it is useful. So the question is, what makes it of value? What makes it useful? What does it make possible? Well, one way to talk about that is to say that this awareness that exists, that is not that difficult to notice if you pay attention, that this awareness that exists is not doing anything. It's not going anywhere. In fact, it's formless. It's like an empty space. If we look at it, we can see that it simply happens. For example, if you notice seeing, for example, being aware of seeing, are you doing anything to see? Does seeing require an effort? Are you making an effort to see? Do you practice seeing so you can get better at it? Or is it just happening? Or hearing? If you pay attention to hearing, hearing is happening. It's just happening. You don't have to do anything to hear. Same thing with the other senses. Touching is just happening. Smelling is just happening. So there's an experience that's available in which there is an awareness that is effortless, that is just happening. That's like empty space. It's here all the time. And when we slow down and we are still, and we move our attention away from thinking, this awareness starts to become more available. And the more we're aware of it, the more we feel the experience of being it. And the experience of being it feels good. It feels relaxed. It feels satisfied. It's not in conflict with anything. And as we experience this way of being called awareness, it can become evident very easily that since this is always existing, since this is always available, and since this does feel comfortable and satisfied and relaxed and peaceful, wouldn't it be a wonderful way to live, to be this all the time, in the middle of life, in the middle of activity, in the middle of the challenges that we deal with every day? Being aware of what's happening in the world, being aware of what's happening in our physical body, being aware of what's happening in our immediate relationships, the story of our lives, the challenges that we deal with all the time in terms of trying to understand what's going on, trying to figure out what to do. And it seems as though if we could be this awareness consistently, if we could practice recognizing this awareness consistently, that there would be a kind of peace, a peace that passes understanding, because it's not a peace that is a function of having the right circumstances. It's not a peace that's a function of being able to get away from all the stimulation that exists in the world. It's a peace that can be experienced in the middle of all the activity. A silence that exists even when the sounds are loud. A stillness that exists even when there's movement. And we can also come to realize that this state of awareness, this consciousness that's never not here, allows us to be in the world in a way where we recognize new possibilities, because we're not tied down by thinking, we're not tied down by past experience. There's this freshness that's there that allows us to recognize new ways to be, new ways to see, new ways to understand, ways to see and be and understand that allow us to recognize that if we're being this awareness as we live our lives, that there's a kind of freedom there, a freedom to allow everything to be the way it is, to not resist life, not to resist whatever is happening, and actually to feel one with it, to experience somehow that all this that's happening all the time is happening by itself. That even when I thought I was doing things, what was happening was doing things. And what was happening is the total reality. Not me as a separate, long-lasting individual self. It becomes evident when the awareness is who we're being, that this idea we have about who we are is nothing other than a thinking process. And when we don't identify with that thinking process, we're able to see the world differently. We're able to see the world not the way we think it is, but the way it actually is. We're able to see the world as an interesting, constantly moving, constantly changing reality that seems to be expressing something, seems to be manifesting something that is coming from nowhere, causing everything to happen the way it's happening. And this view of it is a view in which the effects that typically happen in terms of feeling like life is happening to me, or that I have to somehow maneuver myself through life and maneuver myself in the world, that somehow it becomes apparent to me that I don't need to do that. I can let go. I can let go. I can trust that there's something that is happening here that has its own intelligence. That there's something that's happening here that is beyond what I can understand. And I can relax and enjoy the ride. I can relax and enjoy existing in the world as this awareness, because This awareness is unaffected by all the activity that's occurring. The experience of it is that that's just so. When we practice meditation and we begin to become aware of awareness, and not only become aware of awareness, but experience that that awareness is what I am, and as I experience it as what I am, the view changes, everything changes. I'm no longer separate from life. And there's this experience of simply existing in a way that's free and satisfied and fulfilled. And although it's beyond understanding, it doesn't seem to matter that it's beyond understanding, because whatever it is, if I'm experiencing it, and along with that experience comes the freedom and the sense of well-being and the sense of satisfaction and happiness, that understanding isn't necessary. I've already experienced the possibility of being at home in life. Understanding isn't necessary. There aren't any questions about anything. Everything seems obvious. So this is a wonderful experience of being alive that's possible. We can have moments of experiencing it when we meditate, when we are still and silent, and we move attention away from the thinking activity. We can experience this for moments at a time, and it's very fulfilling. So it becomes a matter of being interested in, is this a possible experience that I can be having all the time? Well, it seems like it must be possible if it's here all the time. So in order to have that happen, what we're doing in meditation by sitting still and being silent and paying attention is something that we need to bring into our everyday life instead of just when we're sitting in meditation. Because if this stillness, if this awareness is always present, is always in existence, then it must be possible to be that all the time. How do I do that? Well, you don't do that. It's not something you do. The awareness is not something that you have to do. It's natural. It's happening by itself. And so how to do that is just to pay attention to when you're in the world and in your life, and you're paying attention to the thought process, which tells you that you're a physical body and tells you that you're a personality and tells you about life and about the world. And when that's happening, you're not able to experience the peace, satisfaction, happiness, and well-being. So then there's the practice. The practice is paying attention so you can notice when you go back into being the conditioned version of yourself, when you go back into being the personality in the body. Noticing that if you're aware of that happening, then you're not being that. And if you're aware of that happening and you're not being that, then you're practicing being what you are. And as you do this more and more consistently, life becomes easier and easier, because now you experience yourself to be the space of life instead of what's happening, the awareness of what's happening instead of what's happening. And that awareness is always at rest. It's always peaceful. It's always fulfilled. And the more you practice this and the more consistently you experience being the awareness, the more your life becomes fulfilled. The more life becomes an interesting reality that continues to happen all the time. Being viewed from the awareness, it's simply fulfilling. It's simply interesting and fulfilling. It's not scary anymore, because you realize that when you're being what you are as the awareness, there is no threat. Nothing can happen to this awareness. So, questions? If you practice meditation consistently, what's available is the experience of being free and peaceful and happy and fulfilled, regardless of the circumstances. So, where are you at in regard to this practice? Is it something that you find yourself able to do, or do you get lost, or do you get stuck? What happens? Because if you get a sense of what I'm talking about and you're interested in it, then you must be interested in experiencing it consistently. And if you are interested in experiencing it consistently, but you're not experiencing it consistently, why not? What's happening? Well, the idea of letting go is, you could call it a practice. You know? But what the letting go is letting go of is the whole configuration. So it's not, when you say, when something happens that's upsetting, that the practice as you understand it as a person is the person is letting go of that upset, okay? So there's another deeper way of understanding this, and that is that, as I was talking about the awareness in terms of practicing, noticing that it's always in existence and noticing that it's possible for you to identify yourself as that which is aware of what's happening rather than that what's happening. So letting go is letting go of being the person. Not just letting go of the upset of the person, but letting go of being the person. How does the person show up? In thought. How does what's happening show up as an upset? In thought. So the letting go is letting go of everything that's not what you are. The awareness is aware of everything, but it is not what it's aware of. Right? So letting go is letting go of the whole thing. Letting go of the identity of being a physical body, letting go of the identity of being the thinker of thoughts, letting go of thought, letting go of emotions, letting go of the past, letting go of the future, letting go of the whole thing. Why? Because when you're experiencing yourself as the awareness is not attached to any of it. It's aware of it. It's not attached. That's why in Michael Singer's book it's called The Untethered Soul. Not tethered to anything. Living untethered. Not tethered to anything. The awareness is not tethered to anything. It's not attached to anything. It's not following thinking. It's not identified with anything. It's hard to conceive of the freedom that we're talking about here. Because the freedom we're talking about here is nothing. It's nowhere. It's beyond conception. It's beyond conception. And yet it is available at all times. So rather than talk about it, or rather than try and figure it out, rather than practice anything really other than noticing the awareness, you want to notice the awareness. There's a two-step process. Right? You can notice the awareness right now, can you not? You can notice the awareness, okay? So if you notice the awareness, that's step one. And you can do this anytime, anywhere, under any circumstances, just like you just did. So then the second step is to let go of identifying yourself as anything other than that.